righty. Looks like some people are still joining. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So everyone, if you missed the announcement earlier, my name is Brittany Hunter, and I'm the founder and CEO of Mogul Millennial. First things first, there's some type of weird situation going on with Zoom right now where some people when they join, my name is popping up as your name. So if that's happening to you, then go ahead and rename yourself. You can do so by basically clicking on the three dots by your name, and then you'll see an area to click rename, and you can put your name. So a little bit about Mogul Millennial. We are a media company and also home to the #1 funding discovery tool for entrepreneurs. We were started pretty much just from a simple idea and a problem that I was having as an aspiring entrepreneur. I felt like there was a lack of content and resources for entrepreneurs that look like myself, so Black entrepreneurs. And so we launched a few years ago, and since then we've been a part of some really cool accelerator programs and have built a really strong community. So today I am super excited about this webinar. This is the first time we're doing something like this, and this webinar is with HearstLab. As you know, HearstLab has a really cool pitch competition coming up where they are investing $100,000 into a female-led tech startup. And so we have Easton Rossell from HearstLab. She's on the investment committee, and she's here to just tell y'all more about what to expect, what the application looks like, some fun tips and just guidance on how to properly prepare and more. And so I'm going to bring Easton up in just a second so that way you can get to know her, and she's gonna just share more about the pitch competition.
Thanks, Brittany. Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I will share my screen. I feel officially like a founder. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Before you get started, guys, there will be time for Q&A at the end. If you have a question, DM me. I'm gonna change my name to say Mogul Millennial, since there are silver Brittany Hunters in the room. So DM Mogul Millennial. Just send your question directly to me so that way it doesn't get lost in the sauce in the chat. All right. So I'm about to rename myself right now. And then if you think of a question, you can go ahead and send it to me, and then we'll try to get to as many questions as possible towards the end.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brittany. As Brittany introduced me, I'm Easton Rossell. I'm the venture director with HearstLab. I'm a big part of the team that screens and evaluates and then coaches the founders as they go up to the pitch competition. So I am definitely the person, one of the couple of people that can best answer your questions today. I want to say a big thank you to Brittany, first off, for hosting and promoting this event. We're so grateful for the support that we get in reaching as many female founders as possible. And I also want to say Hearst is a huge media organization, but I feel like I could learn the most from Brittany about marketing, truly. And then just lastly, thank you to all the founders for taking time out of their day. We always say time is your scarcest resource. So I want to make this as valuable as possible to you. I hope you learned something, and please do ask me anything in the Q&A. Here's our agenda for today. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background on who HearstLab is, how we invest and support our portfolio companies, and then we'll spend the rest of the time going over the pitch competition, the terms, the criteria, the best practices, and then a quick shout out. We are going to get to hear from a HearstLab founder, Katie Troth Taylor, towards the end. She was our winner in 2023. So she'll get to tell you a little bit more about her business and hopefully the value of participating in our pitch competition. Okay, so HearstLab is a part of Hearst Corporation. So we are definitely corporate VC. We have a couple pieces to our mission, but I would say the biggest one is to try and close that very large funding gap for female founders. Beyond closing the funding gap, we are also looking to spotlight the incredible female talent, both present in the Hearst ecosystem, as well as present in the founder ecosystem. And then we're also looking to bring that innovation through investing in these startups directly to Hearst. We were founded 8 years ago by our chairwoman and executive vice president at Hearst, Eve Burton. Since then, we've made over 70 investments. I think it's 76 investments to date across the US. We've expanded internationally at this point. And right now, our total aggregate portfolio valuation is over 2.5 billion. So we've been quite busy in those 8 years. A little bit about Hearst because it is our parent organization. So we look to invest in areas that are strategic to Hearst. That idea can be very, very broad. I think most people would be very familiar, hopefully, if our marketing is working, familiar with the media division. So a lot of magazine titles like Cosmo and Elle. We own Good Housekeeping. We have a stake in ESPN. We're invested in A&E networks. Certainly, the media businesses are very much a part of the DNA of Hearst, but there are over 360 different businesses within Hearst. I would say at this point, the majority are actually outside that media division. And so we have a number of businesses primarily within healthcare, within transportation and logistics, within real estate, and then on sort of the financial services side, we have Fitch Ratings. Most of those businesses are B2B data as a service businesses. And so we're looking for businesses that connect on an industry level to the Hearst portfolio. And we also invest quite a bit in enterprise software and future of work. So along the employee benefits line, areas where Hearst can often be sort of an anchor client or a pilot customer for a startup at a really early stage. So switching to a little bit about how we support our portfolio companies, the line we use internally is we treat everyone equally, but not the same. Certainly every startup, every founder sort of has a different journey. And so we really are trying to tailor how we're harnessing Hearst and our team to support your startup in a bespoke manner. So beyond providing capital, we offer quite a bit of hands-on support and services for up to a year post-investment. This depends on sort of the stage of our investment, but generally that support includes access to our internal team, so the HearstLab portfolio support team, Hearst legal team, as well as our network of 180 scouts. I'll go over sort of those pieces in a little bit more detail on the next slides, but we also have an incredible community of female founders, over 100 female founders that we've invested in. And then if you are in New York or you want to move to New York, we have this incredible space. Hearst owns that office building, that picture, and I'm actually presenting from there today. To go a little bit more into sort of our dedicated portfolio support team, generally, we're working on short-term or long-term projects for founders. We have people in a number of different areas, and it can shift a little bit depending on the needs of our portfolio. But broadly, it's across business development and sales support. It's across data and operations, a lot around fundraising and financial analysis, growth marketing, and engineering. The scope of the projects, it can really differ. Sometimes it's just a 30-minute sort of meeting around advice. And then sometimes it's overseeing a 6-month pilot with Hearst, where we're trying to build sales collateral, we're trying to build marketing materials. It could be a very long engineering engagement. Again, it depends on the startup. As far as our legal support, so beyond the operational support, we provide access to Hearst's amazing legal team. It's about 30 to 40 corporate lawyers who tend to be specialized in certain areas. That's thanks to our chairwoman, Eve. She's the chief legal officer, so she's brought in the lawyers to support our founders. Every startup's legal needs are different, but very broadly, we tend to see a lot of support given in the areas of contracts and data privacy and security, user agreements, sort of labor and employment's a big one, IP. Those are all areas that we advise on. And then the last piece, but never the least piece, is the HearstLab Scout Network. So at this point, we have over 180 women who work full-time within Hearst, but have donated their time to support our founders. They're providing their time and their expertise to support. It can look a couple of different ways, but broadly, I would say it's around mentorship, it's around warm intros within their own networks. It can be advising within their subject matter expertise. They can be overseeing a partnership between the startup and Hearst. but broadly, we are trying to use these Scouts networks to extend your network. And my slides aren't changing. There it is. Okay, so moving into the pitch event, which is why you're all here. We started the pitch events almost exactly 2 years ago in San Antonio. We came up with the idea with the goal to invest in startups that we thought had really promising founders, but were just a little bit early for our traditional focus. So what that means is we're usually looking for founders that are very much in the pre-seed to seed stage, maybe a little bit earlier than seed. That's sort of the sweet spot of when we're looking for founders to apply. I would say the pitch events have been highly successful. We've had 8 events since we've started in San Antonio. We've had over 14 different winners, so multiple people can win a single competition. We've invested over 1 million in these sort of founders at the pitch events, and then 4 million in total. And so the winners of these pitch events very much go on to be sort of a larger part of the HearstLab portfolio. We do follow on investments. It's very much part of our pipeline strategy to find these companies early and continue to invest in them. We've seen in several cases that founders who win these competitions, they win the 100K and they can use that to sort of kickstart a larger round since we're sort of the first institutional. Beyond that, I always like to clarify this piece. We're holding these events in different cities. So this one happens to be in Atlanta, but it's open to anyone headquartered in the United States. So you do need to be in Atlanta on that day, but it's not limited to say like Southern founders or founders who are just in Atlanta. If you are here in the United States, please feel free to apply. And then lastly, if you want to get a sense of the feel and the drama of the event, A&E did a docu-series on our 2 most recent pitch competitions in the US. There's a link to it, and I think we're gonna drop a link in the chat. It's somewhat of a fun watch. It's a lot of there's a lot of me, but the founder part's great. Okay, so looking at our investment terms and criteria for the pitch competition, I'll start with the terms. So as mentioned, all founders are pitching for 100K. All finalists are eligible to win. So the 100K isn't split. Like if there are 3 winners, it's not like everyone gets 33K. Each founder gets 100K. We don't have set terms around sort of the instrument or valuation. We can invest on a note, we can invest on a safe. And in terms of the valuation, we tend to work with the founder, and the valuation depends on the stage you're in, the traction you're in, the industry you're in, sort of all those data points that go into evaluation. As mentioned, we are looking
So I have a question, just a follow up to that then. Like what was historically, what has the terms been? Like is it anywhere from 6%, 3%? Like
it's not based on a percentage. I really hesitate to throw out firm numbers. I've never seen a valuation go over 15, and I've never seen it be below 3, but it really does have a broad range just because sometimes the sort of revenue and traction of the founders are really spread out. And so we try to make it fair relative to where the startup is.
thank you.
Sure. Straight into Q&A. We are looking for companies that are led by a female CEO. It's part of our criteria. We have a checklist where in order to get the application link, you answer that question, but in the name of everyone's time, if you're not the female CEO of your business, then this unfortunately is not open to you. Beyond that, we are looking for businesses that are B2B or B2B2C that are tech enabled. So it doesn't have to be pure software. Marketplaces also certainly count. As mentioned, HQ'd in the United States. And then from a product standpoint, we are asking that there's sort of a working MVP. There needs to be a product in market that we could theoretically demo. It can't just be a Figma file. And then this part's a little difficult, and I'm hoping I get questions about it in the Q&A. We are looking for some affinity to Hearst businesses. That can be a sector affinity. So the sectors you see listed on the left: enterprise software, data, fintech, healthcare, transportation, media. And then sort of future of work. But I would love to see some questions, hopefully in the Q&A, and we can sort of figure out maybe where your business would lie. I know it's hard to tell from the outside in what's going on at a company. And then I was asked for tips and tricks to an application. I'm reviewing it, so I don't think you can trick me, hopefully. But I do have some thoughts on what we look for and want to give some insight into sort of what we might prioritize or consider a little more heavily than some of the other questions. But I will say we read every answer when we're considering the application, and so it's definitely a part of the whole. As a background, we have a pre-check form to the application. There, I believe, are 3 important questions. One being, are you a female CEO? One asking whether there's a physical product or good, and one asking whether you require FDA approval. If you answer yes to the last 2 questions, if there is a physical product or sort of FDA approval required, then it's not a fit. It's outside of our criteria. And so we're trying to save you the time of filling out this application if you're not a fit. If you did pass the screen, you get the link to the application, then assuming that you are eligible for our criteria. I think the application is pretty standard. In terms of the questions, we're going to be asking about your background, your business description, your traction to date, your fundraise. But I would say, we consider every answer. There's no silver bullet. One of the things we think about the most is founder fit. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a 20-year career within a very specific industry. It could also, you could talk about your unique insight or sort of what motivates you to start your business. Passion can be just as important, I think, as experience in terms of that. It's also important to highlight what the rest of your team brings. We don't need a list of like all 10 people who are on your team, what they're doing, but certainly if you have a co-founder, highlight their sort of background and expertise as well. The second piece I want to talk through is traction. So nothing speaks more strongly than revenue, I would say, but pre-seed and seed, that's just not always the case that you have significant revenue. And so a couple of examples of other things that might work: if you are in an unpaid pilot and sort of the number of users you're working with or the number of people involved expands, like I think of that as a sign of traction. If your stats, whatever that stat is, it could be your sales cycle or your sort of user engagement. If it's higher than the average, then you're outperforming in some way, then that is something that you can highlight as well. If you are selling into enterprises and you show increased productivity or whatever the end goal metric is, even if it's not paid, those are all things to me that absolutely count as traction. I sometimes see founders list sort of hitting product milestones as tractions. I would say it's important, but it's more table stakes. I think everyone's absolutely working towards a product. When we're talking about traction, it's more around evidence of willingness to pay, people's interest in using. And then the other piece I wanted to talk about, the connectivity to Hearst. I think Hearst has a website. We have our businesses under divisions. I would encourage you to broadly figure out which division you would fall into if you do, and sort of start there and understand a little bit more about what the individual businesses within the unit are doing and try and make a tie there. I think it's a little more clear cut if you're enterprise software or selling into employee benefits, and the connectivity is a potential pilot with Hearst and supporting Hearst employees. And then the last piece is, and it also flows into founder fit, is the sort of clarity and thoughtfulness around the application. You can definitely say it's not about the length of the answer, it's about sort of the detail to me of the answer that showcases how much you've thought about how you're approaching your business. As an example, I mean, if you're thinking about like a go-to-market strategy, you might have an ICP. You might not know the ICP yet, but you should be targeting some sort of ICP. The ICP should not be everybody. It's the ideal. And I think there's an opportunity that's sometimes missed by founders to talk about why they choose a particular ICP or why they're choosing an approach that showcases how much thought and research they put into their approach that can go sort of underwritten or overlooked. And so that's sort of what I'm referencing by clarity and thoughtfulness. And then our key dates. So the applications are due August 7th. We will notify finalists on September 6th. So we do spend quite some time reviewing the applications, going through interviews. It's sort of a lot to get through. And then the main event is in Atlanta, November 12th. Regardless of the outcome, if you apply, you are very welcome to come to the event. We try to bring investors, founders, people within the ecosystem. So we would definitely love to see you there. That being said, if you cannot be in Atlanta on November 12th, I'd love to save you the time of applying. You do have to be in person. And then if she's in the audience, Katie, do you want to come on? I'm going to ask you some questions about HearstLab, pitch HearstLab and Narratize. Are you on mute?
There we go. Hey, everyone. Yeah, sorry, it was a forced mute. Hi, Easton. Hey, everyone. So proud to be here and happy to represent HearstLab as a portfolio company.
Welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for joining. Katie's a spectacular pitcher, and so I'm very glad that you guys get to learn a little bit from her experience. But I think it would be helpful to start, Katie. Do you mind telling people a little bit about Narratize to begin with and about your founder journey? Oh no, she's been forced on mute again. Brittany, can you unmute her?
Thank you, Brittany. All right, perfect. Hey, everyone. I'm Katie Trout-Taylor, CEO, co-founder of Narratize. We are the trusted Gen AI co-author for innovators. So that looks like folks in science, technology, and medical industries who need to get their story right, and it's often painfully hard. And Narratize is an AI that prompts you, pulls your best ideas, and generates seamlessly things like pitches and slide decks and proposals and research reports and thought leadership content, all of the stories that you really need to go from the seed of an idea through message market fit. Our journey was we were tapped by OpenAI about 3 years ago. We became one of their first 7 developer ambassadors. I got my PhD in narrative science a way long time ago, and we had identified different narrative algorithms that were proven to be more clarifying or convincing for different types of innovation. And we built up all this knowledge around it, called that knowledge innovation storytelling, and started building Narratize in stealth back then. And we really built on stealth for the first 2 years and got to know HearstLab through some founder introductions. And we were so grateful. And Easton, I don't know if you remember, you probably do remember this part of my journey. We failed to, we pitched to you guys like 9 months ahead of HearstLab Los Angeles. And I loved sharing that story because we weren't ready at the time. And you were able to interact with us, give us feedback and tips, and really help accelerate our progress. And 9 months later, this time last year, I suppose, got up on that stage, and it was kind of a whirlwind, but we ended up winning the Los Angeles pitch competition.
That's so funny you mentioned that, Katie. I was talking to Leah and Katie. I was like, I wonder if Katie will remember the story of like how we met and sort of how it moved into the pitch competition. And I think it highlights something really important, which is, it is very possible to be too early. When we first met, I believe you were pre-product, or the product was, it was just 9 months earlier.
It's like one use case in the platform. It was like, watch, I can do this one thing. Yeah, we didn't have any customers yet. So came back, 9 months later, we had our first 2 enterprise customers. We had a strong MVP. It was a different scenario. But you guys had given us a ton of feedback through that process. You were open to continuously, having those check-ins and updates. And so relationships grow over time. I love that story. We did not succeed at first go, just FYI.
I think it shows another important point, which is great founders take feedback. It's hard to hear sometimes, but they take feedback and they come back better. And most VCs are excited when you come back with something new. They want to see you progress, and it's so important to sort of keep going despite the initial no. And so that's not a question for Katie. I have more questions. I guess, do you have, I don't know if I want to say top tip, because you don't have to limit it to one, but do you have any thoughts on what can make an application stand out, that could help these founders? Any tips on pitching in general, how to stand out in the process?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my favorite stories, as I literally have researched innovation storytelling my whole career, one of my favorite stories is the CEO of Color Genomics got a deal with Levi Strauss, the entire company, because of one story that he told over dinner about how he almost lost his mother to breast cancer. And with that one story, he was able to convince the CEO of Levi Strauss to buy into this innovation around giving all of their employees access to genetic testing. Anyway, I share that to say, know your story, know what's going to create a resonance in the audience and help them really understand the problem that you're designed to solve. At Narratize, we're designed to support scientists, technologists, those companies that have a clinical or a technical kind of aspect to them. The story is often so difficult to tell. It's so complex trying to figure out which impact statement you're going to focus on and which version of your pitch. But I would say, get your story right. Think through how to leverage the art and science of storytelling to get that right. And then my second tip, I think, is, and Easton, you already kind of touched on it, but I think we did a really nice job in the pitch of saying, Hearst, here's what you're going to miss out on if you don't do this. Like, this is how we could fit with you. And we had to bring our proof points in the marketplace more broadly, but kind of helping to paint the picture of why the scouts should care is really important. The Scout Network is really unique. This ability to tap into experts across this huge organization, and all of those experts are truly devoted to and care about founders in the portfolio. And so I think that really helped us kind of get initial traction across the different business units and portfolio, the different, business leaders across Hearst.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. Very thoughtful. Maybe then that's your answer, but my last question is, what sort of value did you find from participating in a pitch competition?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like building the plane as you fly it. That's literally startup life from beginning, middle to the end. And honestly, it's funny because we've designed Narratize to support innovators in that exact work. So I literally live and breathe this every day, and I hear different stories of people who are trying to get their story right, to pitch it, to define, really to do the thinking work around what we're going to develop, what we're not going to develop, how it fits in the marketplace, how it's unique and differentiated. And so really, I would say that's the beauty and the art of going after a pitch, is it encourages you to have that moment of strict clarity, like, this is the market approach we're taking, here's how we're different, and to tell that story and get it amplified is brilliant. And every single founder who I competed against on stage, they're all thriving now in their various aspects of their startups or their innovative work. And so being able to have that, that exposure and that support, we're all considered, if you're on that stage, you're considered kind of part of the HearstLab family at that point, and we all still reach out to each other. And I believe that the lab continues to support them as well. So that's the beauty, right? Is like, take the chance, get up there and practice the story. You're never going to have a better, more receiving and more respectful audience to tell it.
Oh, well, thank you, Katie. A heartfelt answer. I appreciate it. Okay. I want to make sure we stay on time. I have a feeling the crowd has some questions, hopefully. And so I guess, Brittany, I'll take down my presentation probably. How's that?
Yeah, no, that's good. I think we can get started with some questions. We have quite a few that are in here. So I'm excited for this. Before I get to Q&A, I just want to remind you guys, or just tell you guys, this little tidbit. If you decide to apply and you fill out the eligibility form, go ahead and send me your application. You really never know, like, if you may get selected or not. I can tell you there's been plenty of times that I've applied for things and wasn't sure if I'm going to be a good fit or if I was far enough in my startup, and turns out I was. And so I've literally applied for opportunities the minute before, like legit, like the minute before the deadline ended. This particular opportunity is the LinkedIn Accelerator. They used to have an accelerator for creators. And I submitted my application a minute before the deadline ended and got into the program. And so you never know, right? Like, if you're good in. So don't count yourself out before anyone else does. So just want y'all to know that, and don't feel intimidated or anything. You got to put yourself out there. If you're a business owner, you have to put yourself out there. So the first question, I'm going to kind of just go through the questions as they were coming in. How would you define pre-seed? And so I love this question because as a founder myself, I see all the time investors, they'll say, oh, we invest in pre-seed startups. And I think for some founders, what they consider is pre-seed or early stage is different from, I think it varies from, from firm to firm. So at HearstLab, what do y'all consider as pre-seed and how early is too early?
I think, let's see, for us, it tends to change based on the market. Like pre-seed can be a moving metric, but I want to say something that's actually helpful. And so I would consider a company pre-seed when they've, I would say, raised less than $1 million in funding and they're going out to raise something a little more substantial. So maybe $1 million to like 2 million is what I'm typically seeing for pre-seed. That's the actual raise that they're trying to get at their pre-seed. And then in terms of like the traction that I would associate with a company that's trying to raise a pre-seed, absolutely a product and market with some proof points around it. And again, it doesn't have to be revenue, but it has to be some kind of feedback that people are interested, willing to pay for it, like a pilot engagement, an LOI, like that would count for a pre-seed, absolutely. The most sort of revenue I'm seeing for a pre-seed at this moment would be 100K, but it's very common for me to see 30K, 15K, and pre-revenue happens with pre-seed as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that was really helpful. Just some form of traction. And I think traction varies. So if you don't have revenue, you have an LOI. LOI, letter of intent is what LOI stands for anybody that doesn't know. And so what they could look like when Mogul got into the A16Z Accelerator program, some of the LOIs that we had were businesses that wanted to partner with us but they weren't going to partner with us until we had a certain product created, for example. And so that was something that, for example, that Mogul submitted for an accelerator program. So yeah, thank you for that. The next question that I saw, is this only for tech companies?
Is this only for? Yes. So I'm going to interpret that answer and make sure, please follow up in the chat if I'm not answering it correctly. But a common business that I'll see is something that's more of a consulting business. So you're employing a large number of people to provide a service. If there's not some kind of technical component to it where you're like supercharging those consultants with some kind of AI platform, which I don't know how I feel about that business model, but if it's a straight up service businesses, it would be, it's a no. And then the other place we don't invest is if there are like physical locations. And so my coworker just named her fake startup Leah's Laundromat. A laundromat would not count. That wouldn't be a tech business. A marketplace like Amazon, though, I mean, that's not something that's pure software. That's something where goods are being exchanged through a technical platform that counts as tech. I hope that answers the question.
It does. And I'm gonna skip around because this question is related. What about like consumer product goods? So like if you have a hair care brand or I don't know, like a physical product that you sell, whether that's online or yeah.
So we don't invest anywhere where there's a physical product being created, produced. So the brand doesn't count. And that includes if you sort of drop ship and you never have inventory, but we would say that's outside of the B2B or B2B2C focus we have. That would be business to consumer. You're selling directly to consumers. And so that would be outside of our thesis.
Okay. Thank you. I know you mentioned this earlier. You said that you guys invest 100K. You have several winners, but typically or generally speaking, what have been the like investment terms? So how much percentage do you guys take? Is there like something that, a generalized, yeah.
I think I answered this a little bit earlier, but I'll say it again because everyone's very, very interested in, of course, in the terms.
The money.
We negotiate the valuation individually with the founder. It's a process because we pull comps to make sure it feels like a deal for everybody. It very much ranges, so it's why I'm not going to throw out a number, but I gave a very broad range of I've never seen a valuation, I think, if I remember right, lower than a 3, and I've never seen a valuation in the pitch competition higher than a 14. So it can run and has run everywhere between there, and it's something we negotiate directly with the founder based on, for example, if you've been around for 3 years and have 200K in revenue, then that's going to be a very different valuation conversation than the company that's pre-revenue, that's true pre-seed, that sort of has a few beta customers, but it doesn't mean they can't both pitch. We want everyone to be able to pitch, and we'll figure out evaluation based on where you are.
Thank you. When is the deadline to have a working MVP? Is it like when they apply or?
It's the best founder question I've ever heard. Like the night before, if you've got something that we can click around on and demo, then that counts. You're gonna have trouble getting traction that quickly, but the process would be you apply, you send in the application, we review the application, and then we would set up a meeting if we think it's a good fit to follow up for. And at that point, we might sort of demo the product. But that's the answer. Like we won't ask you when the product was created yesterday, you know?
Does a figment of design count?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not. The end users have to be able to interact with it.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, so another question that we got was, does enterprise software have to serve those sectors? I have a retail tech software and it's B2B.
Nope, that counts. That counts. That's please do apply.
What if, and you guys, I'm just gonna literally roll through these questions, okay? What if you've invested in a competitor? Do you keep it to one in your portfolio or what?
We don't invest where it's competitive. I think, it would have to be directly competitive to really knock it out. But if it's something where it's obviously a direct competitor, then please, save yourself the time on the application. We would notice.
Okay. The next question I see is, in lieu of a working map or demo, it says early validation. Can you expand more on the specifications of this?
Can you give me the question again? I'm not sure I understand what the question is.
So I think, and if I'm getting this wrong, guys, whoever submits this question, if you can maybe just rephrase it in the chat. But it says in lieu of a working map or demo, so maybe in lieu of a working product or demo, it says you need to have early validation. Can you expand more on the specifications of this? I would say you just it has to work, period, right? Oh, would a job form low-code app qualify?
Low-code app qualifies, absolutely.
Okay.
People are interacting with the product. That's an MVP.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad you mentioned that because I think for a lot of founders that I've run into, they think that they need to spend, thousands, hundreds of $1,000s on an app before they can be attractive to an investor. But you just have to have something that works. I think one of my favorite things that one of my mentors tells me all the time is like, just make it work. It doesn't have to be pretty. It has to work.
I mean, we have invested in founders that they are running a fancy Airtable with a web form on front of it. Like that is a true MVP. And it was certainly early, but you can do amazing things. And one of the places I feel like founders are very under-resourced is sort of understanding like there are tons of low code. There's so many low code tools, it's hard to know where to start in terms of building out some of these like MVPs.
You are so right. You're absolutely right. There are some pretty cool low code and even no code softwares out here that can help you build your app. Like it's literally drag and drop so you can get it done before the deadline to apply if you're looking to apply. Seriously speaking. Let me see. The next question is, how would a company have traction if it's pre-seed? We kind of talked about this earlier, but if you're pre-seed and maybe what you're trying to say is pre-revenue, traction can look differently. So it's LOIs. What else did you say? The signups count, like wait lists, does that count?
Yeah, it does. I would say, just to be dead honest, like a waitlist can be a weaker form, a very weaker form of traction, just because it's unpaid typically. So if they're not paying, people will sign their name almost anywhere.
Yeah.
But you still have to find them, which is impressive marketing. Like there's something to that. But if you're assuming you mean what's traction if you're pre-revenue, it can also be an overview of your pipeline and that you are 4 calls in with a major logo or something like that. It can be the number of demos you've done. It can be however you are getting closer and want to express that you're getting closer to a paying customer. I've seen all kinds of things written. Hopefully that answers.
No, it does. And I think, guys, just remember, if someone is giving you like $100,000, like if that was you on the opposite end, like what would you want to see, right? And so as much you know, as much as you can share, whatever that's super impressive that you can share, the better. That'll make you stand out more. So like she said earlier or a second ago, you know, signups versus like paid customers or even paid waitlist signups, you know, that'll weigh heavier versus like unpaid signups. And I've seen some waitlist forms where you have to like pay, or you know, you purchase the product before the product actually launches. And so maybe if it's something like that, that could stand out more versus like if people were just, if they just had to enter their email to sign up for your waitlist. The next question is for clarity. How many winners will there be? Is it 10 since you said a million?
When did I say a million? I never said a
Oh,
million.
I'm sorry. Okay. Scratch
Yeah.
that. You didn't hear that from me.
Okay. So put up as many finalists as we want, but in order
Yeah.
to have a normal event, it tends to be
Mhm.
between 5 and 7, and
Okay.
all of them are eligible to win 100K. So if we had 7 finalists, we would bring $700,000 and see who won. If we
Mhm.
had 5 finalists, we would bring 500K and see who won.
Thank you
I've
for
seen,
clarifying that.
yeah,
Oh,
sure,
go ahead.
sure.
Oh, okay.
I've seen one finalist win, and then I've seen half of them win. It just sort of depends on the event.
Yeah, yeah. Can a co-founder represent you if you can't be an ATL, or should the co-founder be the main applicant if they are also female?
Oh, fascinating. I haven't had that question. My instinct is usually it's the CEO who's pitching for funding, like it tends to be their role. And so part of what we consider is how well will this person pitch on stage. If your co-founder is equally gifted,
Mhm.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'd have to think about it. I'll put my email in the chat, and yeah, I don't want to give a definitive yes or no answer, and without a lot. Let me put some thought to it.
Okay, okay. This is a good question. So, it seems like we have a few questions around like the product is launched but not fully launched yet. So, this question says, if I can show a preview of my app, but it isn't in the app stores yet, do I qualify? And I love this question because I've seen some instances where the app store is just taking like forever and a day to actually approve it. And so, so yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm a yes on that. Like it sounds like you have something built. It's not your fault. Apple hasn't approved it yet. That would qualify in my mind.
Okay, okay. How can founders work with Hearst that do not fit the sector criteria? We are not tech, but e-commerce with 2.6 million in revenue. We have great stats and a unique product. Awesome stats and a unique product.
When you say, I assume by e-commerce selling a product, and
Like, yeah.
so it would probably go through our consumer media properties. So like Cosmo holds a pitch competition, and I hope they aren't watching because I can't remember what it's called. It's not a wonderful event. But it's through their magazine, and they tend to focus more consumer facing, obviously, just the nature of their business. Might
Okay.
be I'm not going to say what it is.
I'm gonna make a note and I'll look it up, or I'll follow with you and see if you can get it for me, and I'll drop it either tomorrow in the replay. You know, no pressure if you can't get it by then. If not, you guys to get it. Does Level Up Ventures invest in e-commerce? Level Up, that's your
Yes. So they don't have the exact criteria we do around strategic connection to Hearst. That being said, they don't invest where there's a physical product being sold.
okay, okay. And Level Up is, I don't know if you guys would call it like your sister investment arm. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. They're focused on Black and brown founders. There's no sort of gender lens. But they're looking, I would say, broadly for similar things that we are in terms of criteria, with the exception it doesn't have to be female.
Okay, okay. So we have time for a few more questions. I'm gonna try to make sure that I'm asking some. So just give me 1 second to like scroll through and look, but asking some that are maybe pretty different from what we've already asked. Okay, I think this is different. If we recently began generating revenue, are you more interested in seeing the X factor versus the actual dollar amount generated so far?
I assume they mean like
I can
month.
figure like that. Oh, go ahead.
Do they mean month over month growth? You said X factor?
Yeah, I think, and correct me, DM me, this person if I'm getting this wrong, but when they say X factor, I'm assuming they mean like their secret sauce, what makes them special, like, you know, are you guys interested more so in seeing that versus the actual dollar amount? And you know what, along with that, so the first check that I secured was with Snapchat through their accelerator program. If I'm being honest, like looking back, I get why they invested in us, but I really didn't get why back then because we had revenue, but barely any. And so I think for Snapchat, they invested in our X factor, right? They invested in what we could be and the story and the vision that I have for Mogul. And so I'm not sure if that's what they meant or not, but if they did mean it that way, like what are your thoughts on that? So they have some revenue, but it's not that impressive. So
Uh-huh.
how should they approach applying?
I would definitely say a founder who has the X factor without revenue is infinitely more interesting than a founder who doesn't have the X factor who has revenue. That's the best way I could put it. So it would weigh more heavily. The founder always weighs more heavily than the traction. That being said, there's plenty of room in the application for both those answers. So I would love to see both.
Just I think whatever makes you stand out the most. And before you submit your application, uh ask for feedback. Like before, like I personally apply for anything, like I send it to my mentors, people who are not actually my mentors, but in my head they're my mentors. I send it to them for feedback. And so I would encourage y'all to just get just like a second, third, even a fourth opinion on like, hey, what do you think about this? Should I include this information or not? Is it not necessary? Um, let me see. Okay, I'm so sorry. 1 second. I want to make sure. Can we use Airtable as the MVP? Yes, you can. Absolutely.
People selling all kinds of things built on Airtable.
Yeah, yeah. Airtable is that guy. Is it. If you're not using Airtable, I would highly encourage you. We use Airtable quite a bit at Mogul. I'm not sure if I understand this question, but maybe you do. What if you've had to lease a portion of your MVP to be HIPAA compliant? I'm guessing they want to know, would they still be eligible to apply?
I think this is probably a question sort of prompted by the FDA thing. As long as you don't require FDA approval, if you're not we don't want a startup that's heavily regulated, so like a medical device or something like that. We have invested in certain technologies that are HIPAA compliant, and so that sounds like it qualifies for the application. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does, but if it doesn't, whoever asked that, just shoot me a DM and I think we may have time to ask for clarification. Can a solo founder participate?
Of course. A solo founder? Yes. We invest, I would say about 25% of our investments are in solo founders, not because we have anything against solo founders. Sometimes it's a little bit rare, but we would love to see you. It's hard enough to be a solo founder, like absolutely apply.
Perfect. Let me see. And my apology, to clarify, our product does not meet the criteria. Correct. That's correct. Let me see. If there are any questions that I missed, excuse me, just maybe drop it again. When is the application open? It is open now. It's open right now. Go ahead and apply. Again, like I said a second ago, like I always encourage founders, and I do this myself, get a second, third, fourth, fifth, heck, sixth opinion on your application before you actually press submit, because you want to put your best foot forward. But yes, the application is opened. I'll drop it in the comments in a second, and then also you'll get it in the replay as well. Okay, this is a different question. So I think I'm gonna do like maybe 2 or 3 more questions. And so so sorry if I couldn't get to yours. I mean it, I'm so sorry, but this is the question that's right in front of me, so I'm gonna ask this one first. if the founder matters more than the product, how do you recommending navigating bias in VC?
Woo. That is really tricky. I think the workaround would be to look and see for the investors you're targeting, see who they've invested in previously, and sort of whatever bias you're trying to fight against, go find VCs who seem to have overcome investing in that bias for whatever reason. I would say nothing speaks more strongly than traction. But if a VC has never invested in a female founder, for example, they are not the first person I would call. And we always like to be mindful of your time. So that is one piece of advice. But the other thing that I think Brittany talked about that's really, really important is feedback. And so there are a couple of different ways that VCs are biased. The best way to get to a VC is to have a founder one of their founders introduce you, or to have someone in their network introduce you. And that can be so hard because many people have the cold start problem of they are trying to pitch for the first time as first-time founders to get to VCs. But once you kind of get your foot in the door, you keep asking for intro after intro after intro. And so the first part I'm trying to sort of get towards is if you can at all figure it out, do not approach a VC cold. It's just many people have that bias of like, this person can't find someone else to introduce me. And so just even getting that one foot in the door and then trying to like chain it off into more introductions. Most people want to be helpful, at least women do. I think not that men can't be helpful, many men in VC are, but I would keep asking for more introductions. And then two, as Brittany said, feedback is so important. If you know someone within the VC world who's maybe even an investor that cannot invest in you, that can be a great person to give you really true advice on how VCs that can invest in you will see your deck. So, you always, as a VC, kind of want to leave the door open in case the startup explodes and you look like an idiot for saying no. And so you're like, not at this time, maybe we'll revisit. But if it's simply outside their criteria, like I give very harsh feedback to male founders because I will never invest in them. I can tell them the truth. It's good for their startup, that sort of thing. And so the other piece of advice is help build up your pitch deck with people who understand the industry, but sort of don't have this like worry about like, do we invest in you or not? Like, do I leave the door open? I don't want to hurt their feelings, that sort of thing. I hope that answers some piece of the question, but it is a huge problem. We are just barely chipping away at one piece of it. I don't have all the answers whatsoever, sadly.
Yeah. And I think y'all are doing a good job. I love how y'all are coming at least to the South for your pitch competition. As I shared at the top of this meeting, I'm in Texas, and I would say for the longest, like there weren't really any there weren't a lot of pitch competitions that were happening in the South. And so I think it's pretty cool that y'all are coming our way. One quick note, you guys, as far as if you want to like have a founder do an intro for you, I highly recommend touching base, like engaging or friending that friend on LinkedIn or whatever platform they're most social on. LinkedIn is my favorite, but doing it earlier, like super early before you want them to actually do the intro and build their relationship with them. Because no one is gonna like just do an intro for you if they just accepted your friend request on LinkedIn, just to be totally honest. And so, add them on LinkedIn, include a note, and then slowly but surely build their relationship with them, and then ask, so that way you can, you can put your best foot forward in it. Okay, I'm gonna ask, do we have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so sorry, Ebony, I missed this earlier. Can a service-based company, so for example, a beauty resort that uses AI and VR, AR technology apply?
It's a little vague, but I would say yes.
Sorry, let me keep going. She
Okay.
says the virtual beauty resort for online, and clients also can use the technology for select different hairstyles and hair color before they get the service. So I'm kind of thinking like maybe a upgraded style seat. Is that kind of what it is? That's what it sounds like.
I'm looking for it. Okay. Conservatives basically beauty resort that use AR VR technology. A virtual beauty resort. It sounds like it's almost like a virtual try-on. as long as you are not operating an actual resort with sort of a physical footprint where you're leasing something,
Mhm.
this sounds like if it lives entirely in the metaverse and people are trying things on digitally, then it's very much a tech-enabled company.
Okay.
And even if it's if that's my understanding of it, then you count. Yes, that fits. That's very much the future.
Okay, so this is the last, she said yes is meta. Okay. This is the last question that we'll be able to get to today. Uh so it says also, is it required to be full-time in this program, or maybe what they're trying to say also, or is it required for you to be a full-time founder in order to get the investment, and how much equity is taken? So Kiana, the equity breakdown, it just varies from, what about the first part of the question? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let me read it all the way. I didn't see that. Okay, so hi, Easton. Thanks for the session. Currently working part-time on Trust Technique. It's a software solution designed for the billionaire Black hair industry. Do you invest in a hair tech-enabled solution with a goal to first sell to consumers and eventually to enterprises and small to medium-sized businesses? And then also, is it required to be full-time in this program or to get the investment? And then how much equity is taken?
Sure, sure. Okay, so we'll answer the question a couple parts because she brings up a really good point that there is a future B2B route for the sales, but they're starting B2C. We could invest in something like that, but the fact that it sounds like it's very, very early since the founder's part-time, plus it tends to be in an industry that is not so much a focus for us, I would say the pitch competition isn't a fit. If it's sort of all those three factors combined that make me sort of want to say save your time on the application. But the founder does not have to be full-time. I will say it's a strong preference, but we have invested with the understanding that like with the investment, the founder goes full-time. But I would say it's probably too early if you're not full-time yet.
All righty. Well, Easton, thank you so much for your time. Everybody that is here and that, stuck with us to the end, I appreciate y'all for taking time out of your day, your evening, to chat with us and learn more about this opportunity. Do you have any like final, remarks or thoughts or anything about applying or the competition or HearstLab in general?
I just want to thank you again for helping us spotlight the competition, and really thank you everyone for coming. These are really great questions. You made me think pretty hard after work on a Wednesday. What days? On a Tuesday. Yeah, I have trouble with days.
You know what day it is. It's Christmas,
And
I don't know.
and even, regardless of the outcome of the application, if you're in the Atlanta area or you're in the New York area, we are always doing programming and events to try and network with founders, even if you're outside of our direct criteria. So please follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll see if we can engage you that way. But otherwise, thank you, Brittany.
No, thank you. This was great. Like I told you before, I was super excited about this competition. Partially because it's coming to the South, and I'm from the South. I live in the South. But you guys, I will send over the recap tomorrow, which includes a link to the conversation. So if you hopped in early or you had to like go in and out, then you'll get it. And then you'll also get a link to the application. And what else? We'll find the link for Cosmopolitan, right? Yeah, for their venture arm, and also Level Up. So all the things that we discussed, you'll get that in the email tomorrow. So just make sure that you check that.
Okay.
All righty. See you guys next time.